This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Whenever we get past this COVID-19 pandemic, society will try to get back to normal, or perhaps what will become the new normal. So, when it comes to entertainment like amusement parks, what will the future hold for them? To discuss this, we are joined once again by Pete Trabucco, a travel and theme park expert. He's the author of A Personal Guide to the Best Amusement Parks and Water Parks, and he's on the line from New Jersey. Hi, Pete.
How you doing? Hope everything is well where you are.
That's as best as can be expected. Thanks once again for being on the program with us. Now, since you basically spend most of your time writing, enjoying, talking about things like amusement parks, I think you're the best person to kind of describe this situation. In your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine something like this can happen? And how do you envision a return to something close to normalcy?
Well, being in the healthcare profession, and basically I was involved with the AEDs, the defibrillators that everyone now has, and promoting those in the State House, and being around politics and healthcare. There was always that chance of a pandemic actually getting out of hand, and we've all seen the movies before, and this is very similar to a lot of that, what's going on there. So, yeah, it was expected. It wasn't if, it was really when. But being a roller coaster enthusiast and being involved in roller coasters, thrill rides, and, of course, flying and travel and all that stuff, it is something that in my 60 years on this planet I've never seen. Hopefully we'll never see this again. We'll be a little bit smarter when it comes to realizing the situation and maybe reacting a little bit quicker than we have. I guess a lot's going to be learned from that. But as far as the amusement park industry is concerned, this is I wouldn't say a death blow, but I would say that it is a situation where you probably will not see any new rides at attractions at any of the amusement parks for at least a couple of years as they recoup the losses that are going to be occurring, obviously, this year. I mean, in January, they stopped closing parks in Asia and in Europe, and then, of course, we're not going to open here in the United States or in Canada probably for at least the next couple of months, or at least a month or two. And then at that point, there's going to be a situation of how you actually let people come in. And so, yeah, I've not seen anything like this ever before, and it's a learning experience for everyone with regards to the new normal, as it's going to be called from this day forward.
Now, at press time, there's some interesting developments that have taken place that kind of caught my eye. For instance, analysts estimate that Disney has lost $500 million just from closing its parks through March alone, and that recently Disney in Florida, Disney World, announced 43,000 employees would be furloughed beginning April 19th, and they join the estimated 30,000 employees furloughed at Disneyland in California and an unspecified number of employees working in cruise, production, and corporate roles. And speaking of cruises, because that's something else that, you really can't do social distancing, this I find rather interesting. And it may bode well or bode doom for the parks as well, depending which side of this equation you come down on. In the last 45 days, CruiseCompete.com, an online cruise marketplace, has seen a 40% increase in bookings for 2021 as compared to 2019. So I'm guessing that people are having cabin fever, and they're optimistically looking ahead to what they can do to combat that in the future when things get back to some sort of normal. And this concerns me because I get the feeling when we get not necessarily an all clear, but a somewhat clear, that some people might throw caution to the wind.
This is absolutely true, and all you have to do is look on social media, on the Facebook pages or Instagram or any of them, where you're actually now seeing families that have not seen each other for 3-4 weeks actually celebrating Easter because I live in the Newark area and the New Jersey area, which is the worst hit throughout the world. And you're starting to see people, slack off a little when it comes to social distancing, which can start another second effect. You're right. A lot of people are booking for next year. They think it's going to be probably at that point there will be some kind of a vaccine that will take place, but we cannot, and that goes for everyone around the world, cannot let our guard down until that vaccine is done and completed and tested. Basically, the new norm is going to be what we see now. Again, in New York City and New Jersey, in the United States, and I'm just including in that, not Canada or the rest of the world, almost half of all the deaths and cases are coming out of the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut area. So, and that's where I live. So basically, we are definitely on lockdown for a very long time. And I'm just hoping, like you, that people don't put down their guard, continue doing this, because it's going to still remain there until we finally come up with a vaccine for that, and we'll see what happens. But it's a pretty scary situation, but at the same time, I do feel, we are resilient enough. We've gone through this many times before, maybe not on this level or this scale, but, we're a very resilient species, and I think we'll be fine. As far as the amusement parks are concerned, you're right. It's going to be a death blow to a lot of the smaller parks, the family-owned parks, like Clemington, for example, comes to mind, or Lake Compound, so these are in the United States, that basically rely on this. But it is what it is. We just all have to hunker down, and hopefully within the next couple months, things will be a little better.
Well, when we do get back to whatever the new normal will be, when it comes to theme parks, the situation like social distancing, I mean, one of the things people think about when they think of theme parks, the negative side of theme parks, especially places like Disney World and Disneyland, is the long lines. I mean, I would assume those days are gone where you could have the long lines of tightly packed people. Do you expect that, for instance, theme parks will require people to have their temperature taken when they enter, or other precautions like that?
Absolutely. That is probably going to be a foregone conclusion, because of the bottom line is you can't let anyone in that park if their temperature is, and that's going to obviously negatively affect guests and so on. But that's going to be probably the norm for the at least the near future. Plus also limits to the park. I mean, normally, let's say Magic Kingdom in Orlando, Florida, you're getting about 100,000 people that come in on a daily basis. That will probably be cut maybe more than even half. That will be allowed in the park for social distancing. And, of course, when you go on a ride, you're going to be spaced out. Obviously, it's not going to be right next to each other unless you're family members. And, again, that's something that's going to have to work out. But here's something that people probably didn't even think of. When you go to a Disney park, you put your fingers down, and that's your way into the park, onto the actual I guess mat or whatever you want to call it. That can't be done. That will no longer be done until this is all taken care of, because your fingers are touching and other fingers are touching and so on down the line. There's no way of actually doing that. So that will probably go by the wayside, at least for now. And, of course, Disney will come up with a new way of doing that. But in the meantime, it's probably going to be the old style of basically just checking tickets and going from there. So that's another thing that's going to go on. Plus, here's something else. You cannot do an inside ride. So places like, again, bringing up Disney, like a Magic Kingdom, you can't go on Space Mountain. You can't go on Rock and Roller Coaster, any place that's indoors, because of the fact that, again, you cannot, test the waters or basically, have people secure in places that are closed off like that. Plus, you might have to also wipe down the rides every single time someone rides. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going into it, and that doesn't even include the economic impact. I mean, Six Flags Great Adventure, for example, has got dozens of parks, and they basically usually add rides, kind of like Cedar Fair does with Canada's Wonderland, and of course other places. And unfortunately, this is going to be a gut punch to the entire industry, especially for those that were expecting new rides to take place. So it's going to be a tough time for amusement parks. And when you think about it, in the past, people would go to amusement parks to forget their trouble. During recession, you'd find a lot of people going to Disney or to Universal or to Cedar Fair or to Six Flags just to get away from turmoil and their jobs and any situations for a couple of hours. But in this particular case, you can't even do that. So, we're in areas that we've never been before, and we're learning, hopefully, every day.
You mentioned inside rides. I'm thinking more of the outdoor rides. A lot of rides at amusement parks, they involve G-forces, centrifugal force. Let's just take a simple roller coaster, for instance. The idea of someone sitting at the front of the roller coaster, they're screaming, they're waving their hands, water droplets are coming off of them and hitting everyone behind them. It's something we don't think about normally, but I think we have to think about it now.
Absolutely. Obviously, most people when they're on a roller coaster ride, and I always tell people to do this, in order to enjoy the ride and not feel, faint or to get real upset or get basically throw up, or what you would do is you would scream. Now, in an airplane, when I was flying, I would grunt. That keeps the blood up into the upper extremities so you don't pass out or brown out. Screaming, obviously, is going to allow you to open your mouth, and obviously, if you're just a normal person, spit will come out, and bodily fluids will come out while you do that. And unfortunately, you're right. It will head towards the back of the train and probably hit somebody or splatter somebody in the face. And God forbid, it's even worse where maybe they lose their cookies. And that's happened many, many times, and that does that as well. So there's a lot of situational issues that the amusement parks are going to have to figure out. Maybe they won't have the most intense rides open, at least for now. Maybe you'll have to wear a mask while you're on these rides. There's a bunch of things that are going to have to go down the path. But I want to look at it from the other end as well. The idea of basically staying home for the next year is not thrilling to anyone. We've got to learn to adapt. We've got to learn to adjust, and we've got to learn to live our lives every day, one day at a time, and enjoy everything that we have, family members, and so on. So there is a way out of this before we get some kind of vaccine, but we just got to be patient to see what that is. And you can enjoy yourself just on a little kiddie ride, as long as you've got kids or just feel young at heart. So the amusement parks are going to have to be very creative on what they're doing and how they're going to do it in the future.
Pete, it's always a pleasure to have a chance to talk to you. Stay safe, my friend, especially considering you are in the New Jersey area. Thank you very much for being on the program with us once again.
Thank you. You have a great day.
Pete Trabucco, author of A Personal Guide to the Best Amusement Parks and Water Parks. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0557, and you'll find links to Pete's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. At some point, we will get back to normal, so in the meantime, you can pick up Pete's book and daydream about when we can all go back to the amusement parks. His book can be a great distraction from what we are all living through.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.